Good morning, guys. Welcome to this Thursday, April 30th, and it's the last trading day of the month. Or it's the first month of the second quarter, so I'm not expecting a whole lot of rebalancing going on, but it is the last trading day, so there could be some of it. Yesterday, we got big tech earnings, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and what is Amazon? Did I say Amazon? Meta, four of them reported, and it was wild in the after markets. And then when they opened, they had this massive run, and then they knocked it down hard, like at 10:30. There was some crazy stuff going on in the overnight. I mean, you look at this stuff. I mean, they can show you. Look at that thing right there at 10:30. And then here was like the wrap up of the evening. They just back and forth of swimming wildly, and then they closed and that they opened had this big rally for no reason. I mean the news was a little bit mixed, I guess, but this big rally happened, and then they were holding on to the gains for a while. I was watching that's like, man, it could be a great day tomorrow. And then this thing happened. Like, oh my God, what the heck was that? Yeah, wild overnight. And but we're right back up here again on the ES, scratching up to the highs. Nasdaq is on its way. So overall, I guess the overall sentiment was on the positive side, I guess. I have the Meta is down $60. That's not great. At 10%. Microsoft is down 2%. Amazon is up 3%, and Google I haven't seen. I think Google is on the upside as well. But it's overall, I guess a big chunk of tech earnings came out, and overall, I think the market is reacting positively to it. Most likely, anything which has negative guidance or too much spending, I guess, is what's getting knocked down. Just because they can't see the return on investment on it. So anyway, so that's the tech earnings came out yesterday. The Fed meeting was a non-event. It was a dud reaction. It was a dud when he did the press conference. So not much reaction. There was the unchanged and the kind of what people expected. This morning's news, excuse me, we have news at 8:30. GDP, jobless claims, personal income. That's your inflation reading there as well. The PCE index, employment situation, all happening at 8:30. Chicago PMI at 9:45, and what else? That's about it. So that's Thursday. So then the PMI at 9:40, so 8:30, 9:45 is having bulk news, but I haven't seen a margin increase. Usually you would get a margin increase from AMP showing up here before the news. They may have dropped the ball on it. I got the note that they dropped down the margins to regular margins again, but haven't seen a margin upgrade. So we'll see. Their issue for sure. So overall, a lot of news at 8:30 in about 10, 20 minutes. So I would start off this, given what's happening in the overnight, it a little bit confused trading, but I would start off range bound and I would stay with a bias to the upside. I would start favoring the long side at this point. I would have expected a lot. I mean, where did it go? Where's my F1? Losing my F1. There it is. There it is. All right, so yeah, dark icon on that one. Anyway, so as you can see, we've been stalling right around the 7150. We run out of gas at 7200s on the way up, and right now looks to me like we are right back up again. With a bit of strength developing. Now, I started with range bound because we haven't quite busted out of the range. But the fact that the overnight, it has been net at the open to the upside, backed off, and then back up again, kind of gets you thinking about maybe we have some strength building here. So I'm going to start leaning towards the long side or favor the long side, emphasizing range bound trading still because we haven't really busted out of the range yet. So I would favor long side buying weakness at this point against the 71.85, 70s, 60s, 45s, 35s down to the 20s for rotations up. I would look for short setups since we are still range bound. That's 7200, 7210s, up to the 7220s for rotations down. If they start taking out that 7210s, I would just probably stay on the long side. Not going to be super aggressive on those short type here, but once they start extending into a new territory, you just have to take it, assume or stay on the long side, but assume that they're going to come try to knock it down. So you get this grind to the upside of the knockdowns, and it's never straight shot up unless you have a big piece of news which drives it. I mean, they could come out of that PCE index. You never know, but it's right now staying in favoring the long side. If the reaction to the news is very negative and it immediately blow through this on the downside, I would probably not be aggressive on the buying down here at the lower end of the range, then because then we have news-driven selling, right? So given that we get the reaction on the news, which is not necessarily massively directional, just look to favor the long side, see if they can try to take this higher. If the reaction on the news is negative, especially that PCE index, and they start running this lower, and they start taking out this level, the 7150s, as part of the news event, I would be a little bit more aggressive on the short side and see if they can take it slower. Not very, very aggressive on buying these at that point. So that's the way I'm looking at it right now. It depends a little bit on how that news gets received. But if you're leaning on the Fed announcement from yesterday, the tech earnings, and given that you don't get the surprising news, I think the bias is going to be to the upside. At least that's how I'm going to get started. All right, so that's the ES. So looking to buy against the 7180s. So sorry, 7185s, the 70s, 60s, 45s, 35s. Looking down here to the 20s as the last one to buy against. And the only caveat, if news is what's driving you lower early on here, then don't be super aggressive on the long side. Let the news settle in, and the craziness subside a bit. On the Nasdaq, pretty good on the move to the upside as well there. I'm going to start folding this together a little bit because it looks like we're getting a potential move out in the middle again. It's been pretty crazy here. So the run up here stalled a bit. The run up here again stalled, knocked it down a little bit. Now we made new highs in the overnight, and they backed off pretty hard, and now we're back. It's grinding back up. So volatile on the Nasdaq, very volatile, and difficult to trade this thing because it just whips back and forth like crazy. And if you're on the right side of a move, great. If you're on the wrong side, just get out early. Getting high ticked on the Nasdaq doesn't happen too often, but it does. Most likely, when you're wrong, you get run over and then some. So Nasdaq, just take your loss if it's not working. It's just better. So looking to buy weakness on that guy as well. And the area to watch is going to be the 27,000s again. If they start trading below that, I think we have a news event driven selling, depending on what happened this morning. But right now, looking buying against the 450 to 60s, 410s, 330s, 280s. 27,190s, and then you have 27,090s down here. So below the 27,000s, we just can taking out the session lows and then some. So one level below the session low is 27,090. So yeah, so that would be consistent with something news driven, which we don't want to step in front of. And on the way up, looking for short setups with a lot of caution against the 500s, the 550s, up to the 600s for rotations down. This could just be a probe to the upside, in which cases they're not going to go anywhere at all. We'll see. But I mean, as I said, I'm going to start with a slight bias to the upside, given the news, given the Fed announcement, and let's see how the morning news is going to change any dynamics on this thing. And I mean, if the news this morning comes out and knocks this down hard, then don't step in front of it. And just let it run out of gas and then see where they're actually going to run it. Chances are in a scenario like that, they could take out these obvious support areas and run it down towards the 27,000 pretty easily. But as I said, we will have to wait for news to see how that shakes out. So pretty crazy overnight. And I think we can probably expect a little bit of craziness in this session as well. But so far, I mean, as you can see, it's trying to trade higher, even if Microsoft is to the downside. Microsoft is not crazy to the downside. Meta, though, $60, 10% down. That is not good. I think Zuckerberg is having a problem on his hands right there. Looking at the bonds real quick. They didn't go anywhere, did they? No, they're a little bit to the upside, but they traded lower yesterday. Pretty good on the Fed news. So the yields came up, prices came down. They're retracing a little bit. So I would look for short setups against that the 1230 to 113s, the 13.5 to 6 to see if rotations down. If they start to retracing past these single prints at the 113.05 and 6, and shift into the long side and see if they can run it all the way back up into the 1320s. So that could be a nice long trade if they start taking that out. But as you see, that would look like they're taking out the highs and buying into the highs. I would look for a little pullback after they start doing that to see if I can get long rotations up. But initially looking for shorts against those and see if they're going to try to drive this lower. Right now, the yields have been trading lower. Hasn't been that great. I mean, you look at the capital flow on bonds, look like one big blob, and then they slowly grinding lower. But you can see we have been moving lower in that distribution. If you split this guy out, you see how this whole thing has been building a little bit to the downside of it, right? And we are just heading down here to test these lows. So I'm thinking that we may see a test of the lows, maybe even lower. In other words, yields coming up a little bit. And that would be inflation fears based on energy prices, most likely. Yeah, so it's pretty crazy stuff going on there. But I mean, the bond market, watch the bond market. They start taking that lower, yield starts trading higher. That would be a drag on the stock market for sure. But right now, the stock market is kind of moving higher and the yields are going higher. So it usually goes in one or the other, but it's interesting. On the crypto side, and haven't done much of those right now. The only thing I can see silver, so you can see is moving higher, pretty good clip. Gold is all over the place. That's a big mess right there. Look at gold. That's just flopping around, but it's crazy. Oil is to the down, backed off a little bit in the overnight. And yeah, so you can see, and this is the real oil, the NYMEX oil. You can see here they traded up all the way up here to 110, backing off. I would not be surprised if they start shooting a little bit again, if they're going to lean in to do some military stuff next, since the Iranian is not doing anything. So if they start doing that, that's probably going to happen on the weekend. Usually happens after market close. They do stuff like that. And I would think probably that could also be one of these curveballs, which maybe stalls this little rally here for a bit. We'll see how it comes out, but over the weekend here. So back to the ES and the NASDAQ. Our main focus, you got to look at these guys trading high. ES is starting to make busting higher. NASDAQ is grinding higher. Yeah, market wants to trade higher. So anyway, we'll leave it there for now, guys. So range bound trading, keep the bias to the upside. Watch the news here in about 10 minutes. That's the only thing I think I can see is going to change the dynamics in the short term. And then let's see how this whole thing develops. Alrighty, guys, wrap it here. See you back at 11:30. Good trading. I'll see you back then.